is this true right now that illegal aliens are counted in the census, which is then used for congressional apportionment?
Yes, it is. The census, ever since its establishment, in recent decades, one of the questions that the census asks is regarding citizenship. Now, that had been discontinued in, I believe, the 2010 census, and then President Trump tried to reinsert that in 2020. It's like, hang on a second, if it's because you have, well, first of all, the Constitution only requires the census to count people, so that all they need to ask is, how many people are here. Now, the reality is you get what's called the short form and the long form. The short form asks additional questions beyond how many persons live in this house, live at this address, and then the long form can get into all sorts of questions. I mean, what kind of, I don't know, what kind, how many toilets are in your house,
income
or what kind of dishwasher do you have air conditioning, whatever. The long form goes on for like multiple pages, and it's a way that the Census Bureau collects a lot of information. The Trump administration, well, in President Trump specifically, was like, well, why wouldn't you want to know how many of these people we're counting are citizens, not legal or illegal, just how many people here are citizens versus foreigners. Now, it was the way they did it. However, there were people between the Justice Department and the Commerce Department that the Supreme Court, it went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's called the Department of Commerce case, and there was something about, well, the Commerce Department was asking this of the Justice Department, and when it got all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, the court was divided. It was, I believe, a 5-4 decision. Chief Justice Roberts siding with the liberals. This is before Justice Barrett was on the court, and where he felt that Chief Justice Roberts seemed to be indicating that he thought someone in the administration, someone in government, was being too clever by half, where whether he thought it looked like pretext or that he thought there was more there than had gotten into the record. And so he said, that this was arbitrary and capricious, which is like a key, that's a buzzword under the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA, and had sent it back to the lower court for more proceedings. And all of a sudden, the people at the Commerce Department and DOJ, they just dropped the case. They dropped pursuing it. And so the question never ended up on the census. Now, so in my mind, that looked like an obscene, bureaucratic screw-up. All you would have need to have gotten it on was teeing up the right documents at the White House level, just for the president, any president, to say, yeah, I believe it's in the national interest to know, out of all these people we're counting, how many are here, how many are citizens, which then by definition lets you know how many people are not citizens, and then you can check that against other databases to determine whether the foreigners here are here legally versus illegally. Like if you say there are 5 people in this house and 4 of them are citizens, then the one that's not a citizen, if there's no record of him being in the country legally, of having entered legally, of having a visa, etc., then you by default know that that person is an illegal alien. All they would have had to do is a straightforward presidential finding in that regard. For some reason, and of course this would have nothing to do with President Trump personally, for some reason there were people lower in the administration who just didn't tee it up that way, and something didn't smell right to John Roberts. Now, I was with the dissenting justices there, the conservatives, who are like, who cares? Even if this isn't the whole story, and we don't know if it is, but feeling a little tingle at the back of your neck does not create an APA violation. If if they want to know this and they've gone through the steps to get it, then this question should be on the census. It has historically been on the census. There's no reason it shouldn't be on the census. I was sitting here thinking it's kind of suspicious that Barack Obama did not want it on the 2010 census. Gee, Mr. President, why are you dropping this question?
Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah, instead of being suspicious that Trump wants it on the census, why were they not suspicious that Barack Obama did not want it?
So I was with the conservative justices there that I thought that the way the Trump administration had tried to put it back on the census was perfectly fine, and it should be on the census. But in any event, the Chief Justice was the swing vote, so his view at the time carried the day, and so it didn't end up on the census. But certainly that is information, and I think the polls are showing the American people very much think that we should be asking that on the census, and God willing, we can just put it in statute. But hey, if it doesn't make it through statute, President Trump comes in, he can just straightforward make a finding that to have a rational immigration policy that protects our national interests and that systematizes our system for the benefit of our citizens, we're going to ask this question. If it's done in such a straightforward fashion, then even under what I regard as that incorrect decision from the Department of Commerce case years ago, the question would be back on for the 2030 census.
Okay. Listen, if it's ridiculous. If the census asks what percentage of homes have air conditioners and what percentage of homes have high-speed internet access, wow, how could we not then also ask?
How dare you?
How many citizens?
Yes, by all means, we have high-speed internet. But how dare you ask if out of the 4 people in this household, how dare you ask if any of them here are not citizens or not here legally?
Yeah, well, they'll lie. People will lie anyway. So there's a question about that too. But okay, so that's the census question.
Processes, by the way. But go ahead. And it's also, you're also in trouble. It's illegal to lie on the census. So it's like if you're going to lie on it, you're kind of taking your fate in your own hands there.
Yeah, well, they've lied to be here too. But yes, so that's the census question. But what about the congressional apportionment? So does the Constitution not say in the 14th Amendment, Section 2, that representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed? So they're pretty specific here. We're not going to include the Indians, and we're going to include whole persons. It doesn't say citizens; it says persons.
Yeah,
what do you make of that?
There are this issue went before the court, or a related issue in what's called the Evenwell case several years ago, and then Alabama sought to bring, and that was for redistricting, and then Alabama sought to bring a reapportionment challenge on the same basis, and it's basically this: going back 200 years, the Supreme Court makes clear that the purpose of redistricting and apportionment. That the purpose of that is to provide equal political representation in the U.S. House. And it's like, well, hang on a second, wait a second. If that's the case, then what you want to know is the number of citizens, not the number of persons. And so the legal argument goes, well, the way you thread that needle is you count the whole number of persons, and then you but then you apportion how many seats in Congress each state gets, not on the basis of how many persons there are, but how many citizens there are. Now, it's always been done on the basis of persons. So it's like right now, illegal aliens directly impact how many seats in Congress and how many certificates in the Electoral College for picking a president that each state gets. So this is a big deal. It is an untested legal theory about whether you could redesign that apportionment on the basis of citizenship. There's a constitutional question one way or the other there that would eventually end up at the U.S. Supreme Court, because you have both of those bodies there. You have the text, as you just said, persons. But then you also have, but why are they excluding Indians who were not taxed? And it's like, well, because they're not going to be voting, and we want to be providing equal political representation. And so it's like, well, wait a second. So does the word person there really mean person, or does it mean citizens? So it's saying that the text there even gives a clue as to how you interpret persons. But someone could just as easily say, well, I'm going to say person means person, no matter what. So this is something where there are legal arguments on both sides, and it would be an epic Supreme Court case in the making.
Oh, wow, interesting. So we had a gentleman call in yesterday who is a constitutional purist, as I like to be as well. And I loved his honesty with it. He's like, oh, listen, obviously I don't want illegal aliens to be counted towards congressional appointment. That's crazy. But the Constitution says persons. So if we want to change that, we'd have to change the Constitution. That was his stance.
How did he account for the language regarding Indians in the second half of the clause?
Yeah, but it doesn't say excluding Indians and other non-citizens.
True.
Right. So I get that. I'm with you, obviously. Like I get the jump.
Because understand, modern citizenship laws didn't exist at the time. So it was, well, wait a second. So what are you designing by doing so? What is the reference there? What is the meaning of excluding Indians there? There was no federal immigration system at the time.
So there were no green cards or visas or
existed at the time that the 14th Amendment was ratified.
Okay, interesting. So the argument is if they did back then have green cards and visas, then the founder, or whoever wrote that in 1865, would have put excluding Indians, green card holders, visa holders, and other non-citizens.
Exactly. Or you should have just said excluding non-citizens. So it is. But of course,
Indians
but then you get into an argument yet again on the flip side, because if you are here, let's say, as a legal immigrant from the United Kingdom, for example, and you're working, in some white-collar job here in America, you're still getting payroll taxes deducted out of each paycheck. So you're a foreigner, but you are paying taxes. So it's like, well, wait a second. Then you have this term here about getting, Indian, not just Indians, but Indians not taxed. And so it's like a ping pong game. The ball is going back and forth, one side to the other. It gets into a very intricate legal argument. And I know this question has probably it's dominated the interview, and you probably thought it was a quick one-off. So, I'm saying, so this would really lay profound groundwork going forward here. But the way you need to start that is you need to get the citizenship question back on the census.